And the weak, they bark, they explode, they chase apologies, they need closure like a drug addict needs a fix. But the strong stay quiet, because silence after disrespect is not weakness, it's dominance. Listen to me. When you stay quiet after someone tries to insult you, you are doing something that 99% of people can't do. You are shifting the battlefield. Disrespect is a bait, and the moment you respond emotionally, you lose. They don't want your anger. They want your energy. They want your reaction. They want to pull you down into the level where their voice matters. But when you stay quiet, you force them to face their own reflection. Their words echo into silence. And that silence, it haunts them. Most people confuse silence with submission. They think if you don't clap back, don't retaliate, don't defend yourself instantly, it means you're weak. But that belief is a symptom of emotional immaturity. It's rooted in survival instincts, not strength. Let me explain. We are biologically wired to react to threat. Disrespect triggers the same neural circuits as physical danger. It activates the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm system. That's why your heart races, your jaw clenches, you feel the heat rising behind your eyes. But here's the twist most people don't understand. Just because you feel threatened doesn't mean you are. And just because you're disrespected doesn't mean you're obligated to respond. True power isn't about reaction. It's about control. And silence, intentional, composed, strategic silence, is one of the highest forms of control a human being can practice. You see, when someone disrespects you, they're not attacking your strength. They're probing your self-regulation. They're trying to see what buttons they can push. They want to know, can I make you flinch? Can I make you bark? Can I make you lose yourself trying to prove yourself? And the moment you bite, you fall into their frame. You're no longer the author of your energy. You've handed them the pen. That's not strength. That's emotional slavery dressed up as pride. Silence, however, rewrites the script. When you're quiet in the face of disrespect, you're doing something radical. You're denying them control over your state. You're saying, you don't move me. You don't matter enough to disrupt my inner world. And that shakes people more than any insult ever could. Because here's what happens psychologically. When you respond with silence, the other person is forced to sit with their own behavior. They don't get the validation of your outrage. They don't get the satisfaction of your pain. They get nothing. And that void, it becomes a mirror. It reflects back everything they just did. Now they're not thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. Did I go too far? Why didn't they respond? Do they know something I don't? You've just flipped the power dynamic. Silence doesn't end the conversation. It hijacks it. Let's take this deeper. Silence, at its core, is a discipline. It's a refusal to be emotionally hijacked. It's you choosing response over reaction. And that choice isn't easy because everything in you wants to lash out. Everything in you wants to fire back, prove your worth, crush the disrespect. But ask yourself, who are you really trying to convince? Them or you? The person who can walk away quietly from an insult is someone who has already made peace with who they are. They don't need to prove their strength because they embody it. They don't need the last word because their life is the last word. And that's the difference between noise and presence. Most people are noisy because they're afraid of being invisible. But when your silence is backed by substance, by clarity, identity, purpose, it becomes a gravitational force. That kind of silence doesn't shrink you, it expands you. It forces people to confront their own instability in your calm. There's something deeply unnerving about a person who doesn't flinch when you try to shake them. They carry an authority that can't be faked. And here's the truth. Most people in this world have never seen real power up close. So when you practice silent dominance, it shocks their nervous system. It sends a message deeper than words. It says, I don't move for chaos. I move by design. Understand this. Anyone can yell. Anyone can get angry. Anyone can throw shade and demand attention. The person who can withhold, that's the person in control. That's what makes silence terrifying to the insecure. Because they can't control it, they can't decode it, they can't use it against you. You've taken away their only weapon, your reaction. And now you've become a mirror they can't escape. Silence after disrespect is not the end of the interaction. It's the beginning of your ascension. It's the moment you stop being equal to them and start becoming untouchable. Because when you can't be baited, you can't be beaten. Now, some people will tell you you have to stand up for yourself. And yes, there's a time for boundaries. There's a time for clarity. But silence is not surrender. It's strategy. You're not avoiding the moment. You're rising above the need for validation. And when you do that, you become unshakable. Because the greatest flex is not saying, look how mad I can get. It's saying, look how little this disturbs me. Remember, silence doesn't mean treatment, and the world hears it louder than you think. Let them drown in the noise they tried to throw at you. You've already outgrown it. Most people don't understand this one simple truth. Disrespect is not just an insult, it's a trap. And the trap is brilliantly designed. It's built to trigger your most primal instincts. The moment someone talks down to you, mocks you, or tries to humiliate you, your nervous system doesn't ask, is this worth my energy? It just reacts. Because thousands of years ago, that response kept you alive. A raised voice meant danger. A challenge meant a threat to your position in the tribe. So we developed a mechanism, fight or flight. And today, most people still operate like that, on instinct, not intelligence. That's why so many fall for the bait. The disrespect hits and they jump. They fire back, they try to match the tone, raise their voice, prove their worth, show they won't be disrespected. But here's the problem. When you react to disrespect immediately, you are no longer responding to the moment. You're responding to your biology. You've surrendered your higher thinking to a reflex. And that's exactly what the bait is designed to do. See, disrespect is never just about the words used. It's about the psychological game behind them. People throw shade when they feel powerless. They provoke you when they can't control you. They disrespect you to manipulate the emotional field. Because if they can pull you into their level, they own you. They set the rules and you played by them. And once you've taken the bait, you've entered their frame. Now you're reactive, you're emotional, you're explaining yourself, defending yourself, proving yourself. And that means you're no longer in control. Let me be clear. The person who frames the conversation controls the outcome. And the person who reacts has already given that control away. That's the bait. And every time you respond to it, you teach people how to manipulate you. You signal. If you want my attention, disrespect me. If you want my energy, insult me. If you want to throw me off center, just push the right buttons. And they will, again and again. This is why some people find themselves constantly drained, constantly angry, constantly fighting invisible battles. It's because they've never learned to pause. They've never learned to examine the hook before they bite it. But once you see it, once you realize that not every act of disrespect requires a reaction, something inside you changes. You reclaim your freedom. You learn to respond not out of insecurity, but out of clarity. And sometimes the best response is no response at all. Now, let's go deeper into the psychology. When someone disrespects you, what they're really doing is issuing a challenge to your ego. And if your ego is fragile, you'll rise to it every time. But when you've done the inner work, when your identity isn't based on being seen a certain way, but being anchored in who you are, you become immune to petty provocations. This isn't about being passive, it's about being precise, because reacting costs energy, and your energy is currency. Every moment you waste reacting to nonsense is a moment you're not investing in your own. Evolution. Let me give you something practical. The next time someone disrespects you, don't respond immediately. Don't look for the perfect comeback. Don't scramble for approval. Don't chase justice. Just pause, breathe, observe the bait, and ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Is this moment trying to teach me or trap me? Is this someone who matters or someone who's... You'll be shocked how often the answer is, they don't matter. They're not worth your fire. They're not worth your shift in state. Now, let me flip this on its head. Sometimes the bait doesn't come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from people close to you, family, partners, friends. And that makes it harder to ignore, doesn't it? Because there's emotional history, there's expectation, there's pain. But here's the truth. When it comes from people you love, disrespect is still bait. It's bait covered in memory and attachment. But the cost of reaction is the same: your peace, your power, your progress. You can love people and still not let them pull you into chaos. You can respect them without responding to every storm they throw. And that ability to see the bait and not bite is what separates the emotionally reactive from the emotionally sovereign. Sovereignty, that's the word. That's what we're really talking about here. Sovereignty over your nervous system, sovereignty over your attention, sovereignty over your life. When you don't take the bait, you're not just avoiding a reaction, you're reclaiming your center. You're saying, this energy belongs to me, and I will not spend it proving my worth to someone who doubts it. You're saying, I am not here to match chaos. I am here to master it. You're saying, I will not be pulled out of alignment by noise disguised as challenge, because that's what disrespect is. It's noise. It's distraction. And your life is too important to be governed by people who don't know who they're talking to. This isn't about arrogance. Let it fade into irrelevance. Let your silence teach a lesson your anger never could. We live in a world that rewards volume. The loudest voice in the room gets the attention. The one who shouts the most is seen as the leader. The person constantly speaking is often mistaken for the one who knows what they're doing. But that's a lie we've been sold, because in real power structures, in real psychological hierarchies, the most dangerous person is rarely the one making the most noise. It's the one who doesn't need to. And here's why. True power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to, because power that is real, power that is deeply rooted in competence, composure, and clarity, radiates quietly. It's the person who can sit still when chaos erupts. The one who speaks less, but thinks more. The one who doesn't get baited, doesn't react, doesn't get pulled into every emotional current around them. That's the dangerous one. Not because they're cold, but because they're calculating. And that kind of person is not to be underestimated. Let's explore this through the lens of psychology. There's a term in neuroscience called latent inhibition. It refers to the brain's ability to filter out irrelevant stimuli. People with low latent inhibition are constantly distracted. They can't block the noise, they react to everything. But people with high latent inhibition, they don't waste energy on what doesn't matter. They absorb only what's necessary. They're selective, focused, quiet. Now apply that to emotional dynamics. In conflict, most people speak to be heard, but the quiet ones, they listen to understand. They are collecting data, observing, storing information. And because they don't waste energy reacting, they have the bandwidth to respond with precision. See, noise is a form of insecurity. People over-explain when they're unsure. They raise their voice when they feel powerless. They interrupt when they're afraid they'll be forgotten. But silence is the behavior of someone who knows they're already ahead. They're not performing, they're not posturing, they're preparing. And that preparation is what makes them dangerous. You ever meet someone who's calm during an argument? Not indifferent, calm. While others shout, they sit back with a stillness that unnerves the entire room. That stillness isn't weakness, it's containment. They're not withholding their power, they're conserving it, because they understand that timing beats intensity. They're not looking for victory in the moment, they're looking for the right moment to strike. And when they do, it's surgical, unavoidable, final. Now let's take this deeper. The quiet ones don't reveal their thoughts easily, and that creates tension because the human mind fears what it can't predict. When someone's loud, you know where they stand, you know what they want. But when someone's quiet, you can't read them. It breeds power. In game theory, there's a principle called strategic ambiguity. You never reveal your full position. You create uncertainty to increase leverage. The quiet ones do this naturally. They hold their cards close. They don't telegraph their intentions. And that makes them unpredictable, which makes them dangerous in every interaction, personal or professional. Let's be honest. The people you remember most aren't the ones who talked the most. They're the ones whose presence shifted the energy in the room. And presence is built in silence. It's built in restraint, in not needing to prove, not needing to dominate through volume, but through aura, through awareness, through intensity without noise. Now, let me be absolutely clear. Quiet does not mean passive. It doesn't mean shy or submissive or afraid. It means directed. It means conscious. It means every word they speak is intentional because they understand the value of language and they don't cheapen it by wasting it. This applies not just in conversation, but in life. The quiet one walks into a room and surveys the energy before they speak. They read people. They read posture, tone, micro expressions. They gather intel because they know every interaction is a map and they're drawing it in real time. While everyone else is talking, they're positioning, they're predicting, they're playing long-term games. That's what makes them lethal. Most people are playing checkers. The quiet one is playing chess, and you'll never see their moves until it's too late. Here's the thing. When you train yourself to be this kind of person, to be quiet, calculated, in control, people will fear you without understanding why. Because you'll violate the script they're used to. They'll say something disrespectful, expecting a fight, and you give them silence. They'll brag, waiting for praise, and you give them stillness. They'll try to provoke, to bait, to break your calm, and you don't move. And that psychological stillness is terrifying because it reveals their instability. It turns their performance into an echo chamber, and in that silence, they unravel themselves. That's the paradox. The most dangerous people aren't the ones who strike first. They're the ones who wait and strike last, because their goal isn't to win the argument. It's to